Oh yeah, what's going on? Coming in yet again. Another sunny day. Man, haven't had rain here in quite some time. It's nice. It's nice. I mean, rain is nice too, but it's nice to have these beautiful evenings where you can just go hang out, chill. But anyway, I want to complete the trifecta since I started making a couple of videos about, the triple I identification. I covered the identification principle a bit, then I did the implementation. So now comes the most boring but also the most crucial one. That's how you can tell life is not made by the most intelligent of designers, in my opinion, obviously. It's because, man, like all the best things are nasty, not fun, and all the best things, the most enjoyable things end up being kind of like the worst for you. Hey, what can you do? You gotta make it through, right? But it's not enough to just think stuff, want stuff, and even just to do stuff. Like, you can't just do stuff and then expect things to happen. Hey, that's how our mind responds to language. It thinks because it says something and because the meanings are logical, then outcomes are kind of determined, right? Like, if you eat healthy and you exercise, you're gonna lose weight. And this is a very, like, for example, like, this is just almost infinite amount of possibilities you can do this way. Give an examples like this, but because you are putting these strings together, you're also kind of like shortcutting the syllogism, right? So if A is C and B is C, then A is B. So that does not that's not how it works in real life. Greeks, they were suckers for logic, and a lot of ancient people were as well, because they really didn't have much else in terms of technology to show them that what they were doing was correct, that they were on the right track, and they could reproduce their ideas over and over and over again. So they stuck to logic as a way of kind of having a sure shot affirmation that their thought process was correct, that their thought process was sane, right? I think you should be comfortable with chaos and with being uncertain and with constantly correcting and improving things. But I also acknowledge that it's impossible to constantly be wrong maybe or something about something, or not have things pan out sometimes the way you plan them. So predictability is an incredibly important trait of anything, and aspect of anything, and a feature of anything we do, especially in computers, right? Like with computers, if a system is not predictable, it's not very usable. There are lots of layers of predictability that need to go in a computer software. It needs to be predictable on the code side, it needs to be predictable on the data side, it needs to be predictable on the user experience side. So people need to be able to click things and get the same results over and over and over and over again. So how does all of this kind of lead into iteration, right? You could say, well, am I rambling on again? And I would also encourage you not to think that way too often. And if someone is veering off a little bit on something, they probably had an idea and they connected that idea to another idea, and you want to catch those little transitions. Yeah, sometimes you want to pull back and like keep the conversation on track. So you can say, sort of, I'm doing that. But why did the person transition into that thought process? Like, if you're just rambling with friends, that's one thing, because sometimes you're just killing time. You want to communicate. You want to share as many things as are on your mind. But if you're having like a more academic or intelligent discussion, usually you would want to think like, oh, this person is talking about computers, and then they started talking about behavior. Why? Probably they connect. Probably these two things are connected in their minds, and so what I've been saying also connects on some levels. On one of those levels is that all of these processes that I just described are iterative. If you want to have if you want to rely on logic alone, you're basically keeping the training wheels on at all times. Because with logic, you really don't need experience to kind of verify some of the claims that you're going to be making. Once you start putting meaning into it, and once you start putting falsifiability into it, like some things can be wrong, there's a chance of things not adding up with the way you say things, then you're gonna have to start kind of taking your chances on the on how well you've iterated over the ideas and over the craft. So in some cases we call that experience, like how experienced you're in something doesn't just mean like how well you know something, but how familiar are you with things that can go wrong, how resilient are you in that sphere, right? Sector. So with iteration, and like I said, meaning, like the word semantics are extremely important, because you want to keep reiterating things to yourself over and over and over again, especially in the beginning. And you're gonna hit a phase where you're gonna start saying these things, and they're gonna be meaningful. In the beginning, they're gonna have to be meaningful because they're new. You haven't incorporated, first of all, these actions. They haven't become your habits. And then third of all, you've also haven't really understood their meanings. In the beginning, what you know about something, and then later on, like months or whatever, years later, after you have experienced the ups and downs and all the angles of the thing that you're going to be involved with, you should have a very different understanding, both semantic and experiential, of what it is. Basically, you're going to have a very intimate approach to the things, and you're going to have a more detailed, nuanced, people say, view on the subject. So with that can only come through iteration. You cannot identify, let's say, something so completely in the beginning that you can skip this step. That's just not how it's going to work. It's just like semantically not going to work either. These words won't add up. You can't implement something on such a perfect scale from the very beginning that you can skip this iteration as well. That's especially true of software. It's a constant challenge to try to architect and build things from scratch in such a way that they can be scalable, extensible, and all this other stuff. But it's impossible to predict future requirements, future trends, and just like human errors that are going to go into it. So that we do our best, but that's why every app has new versions, right? There's improvements, they've caught some bugs, some new things have been added, new bugs have been caught, and so on and so on and so on. The process is iterative. Human mind is like, when you're doing things, you're kind of like programming yourself. That's the interesting part with humanity, is that we are like the kind of software that can program itself, and I think that's the main definition of what will soon be known as like the real smart software. Like what we call smart now is that it's just able to predict a few things based on like the inputs that the options that it gives you. So like if let's say the watch is smart, it has a few more data points that it can offer to you based on like whatever like sensors it has. So it can keep track of your body weight, it can keep track of your pulse, it can keep track of things like that, but it's not smart because it can never do anything to itself. And that's the real test. Like, it must improve, be able to rewire itself, upgrade its like software, firmware, I guess you could say. That's when firmware too, why not? What am I saying? Not hardware. Well, actually, with humans, we can upgrade our hardware too, right? So we're gonna have all these like implants and this other stuff. But that's the definition of a smart thing, where we can introspectively look at what's missing, and we can reboot some of these things. We can upgrade some of these things. We can create new branching logic on some of the things that we do. We have options. Sometimes some options are easier to implement, more expedient. The other ones sometimes take longer, but maybe are more favorable in the long term. But that's in essence what a smart product should be like as well. You know, your watch isn't just going to tell you your heart rate. It's going to be able to tell you that, look, you should go for a jog on Saturday at 6 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. because the weather is going to be like, it's going to be like 26 degrees, so the oxygen saturation is going to be better than any other time during that day, and you're going to get the most out of it. And you should be hitting around like 90 beats at whatever X amount of time, right? That's smart. They can't do that shit right now. They can try to mimic that because they can just put that out there. But as far as it being actually like reproducible time and time again, it's not smart because it doesn't do that to itself. If anything, it gets that from other services like the cloud or whatever. But anyway, it's not about computers, it's about you, right? You want to be better, you want to improve yourself, and you want to live a really human experience, which I think is the experience of change. You should be able to experience change in yourself. You should be able to experience what it means to be a child, a young adult, an adult, and then later a senior. Not looking forward to that last one, but you have to iterate over patterns and things consciously, and you have to force yourself. There will be periods where you have to force yourself to do certain things to become just strictly better at something that you want to do. You have to force yourself, and then there's going to be this funny period. So you're going to get better at something, and then you're going to force yourself, and then you're going to, overcome that hurdle, and then you're going to basically kind of get comfortable. You're going to be like, ooh, I got this, I got the hang of this, this is easy, and you're going to keep doing it. But then after a while, you're going to notice that you're going to stop. There will be points where you're like, oh shit, wasn't this supposed to be kind of like second nature by now? Shouldn't this be automatic? I just noticed that like I haven't, done this for a while, or actually I took a few days off and it turned out to be more than a few days, and I haven't really been missing it for a while. That's when you know that what you were doing is right and essential. Because a lot of people do not recover from those downtimes. They just forget about these things and they move on to something else. They're absent-minded. They start with one diet, they give themselves a cheat meal after the first week, and then they're on to another diet. And so this kind of shit is what you want to avoid. And this kind of stuff is all as a result of non-iterative habits, not iterating over your behavior and your ideas. So you want to strive to keep reminding yourself, like vocally, in writing. You have to, I would say vocally should always be the case. You can do it anytime you want, you can do it in public. I don't think anybody's going to think you're crazy, but you should be on your ass. And because you're going to be on your ass for a while, and no, you won't be able to do this for everything. Like there's going to be just certain things that will slip up slip away from your consciousness. You're not going to have enough time to iterate, like, put them into practice. And that's okay. That's just the natural selection process, that you're going to favor some things over others. Like, look, if you don't end up getting into getting on a nice diet, well, you know what? That's okay. I mean, you can always try again. It's never a one-time deal. You can try as many freaking times as you want. You should just kind of keep track of how many times you're really attempting the same thing over and over again, because that's also not very good. But if you don't get on a nice diet, but let's say you've got a nice promotion at work, that's okay. You favor that at that moment. So now maybe you can find the time to hit the gym again, or diet again, and do something else. Maybe that particular diet or whatever approach to fitness wasn't suitable, maintainable, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, iteration is, I'll be honest, something that I really hated. I felt like I was being robotic. Yeah, it felt like I was going to turn into a robot. I'm just going to wake up, coffee, work, gym, home, movie, sleep. Wake up, coffee, home. That's a routine. That's not iteration. Don't confuse those two things. And even then, I've gone a basic 180 on that one, and some sort of routine is essential, and it's actually freeing. You need some sort of routine to keep you in check, but you must give yourself always little bits of pockets where you can afford to make mistakes. It's kind of like savings. Like, you're making money, you don't want to just be spending paycheck to paycheck. You want to give yourself a little bit of a buffer room to, mess around. Sometimes something happens, sometimes, I don't know, these examples you can come up with yourself right now. But a routine is not quite the same thing as iteration, but iteration also felt like a damn chore and a thing that someone else should be doing, just not me. Napoleon said, if you want something done right, do it yourself. And if that's true of anything, it is of your personal development. If you want to improve yourself, it's crazy to think that you can offload this responsibility on some pills, on coaches, on life coaches, influencers. Like, you must be insane, and you're kind of insane because your brain is keeping you in this little trance. It's saying like, look, there's probably someone who's probably done it. There's probably like an easier way to do this. There's no easier way to do this. Like, there is just no easier way to change yourself. You have to undergo transformation. Physical things need to change in you. Those physical things result in mental changes. And so save yourself some time. Save yourself. So look, this is not hypocritical. Me saying that, like, oh, I'm trying to help you out. Let's say and then I'm saying, no, you can't actually get anything from me. No, I'm pointing you. The best anything or anyone can do is point you to a path. And yes, pills can help you out. If you're depressed, you can take antidepressants. But you can't be lunging for these things right away, and you can't offload your responsibilities on them. You take antidepressants so you can improve yourself, so that you can get yourself out of a rut. You take coaching lessons because you want to start somewhere. But once you get started, you have to carry yourself through. What kind of an athlete runs or competes in the sport with their coach by their side? The coach is on to the side. Later they can come up to them and ask them for advice. They'll give them some pep talk. They'll encourage them. But the athlete goes the distance alone. And might be a scary scenario. But there's nothing to fear but fear itself. This fear is temporary. It goes away. So iterate over the things that you want to see manifested. Do them some more, do them better. Don't take too long of a break from doing them, and keep doing them. All right, all the best.